Welcome to part 7 of the ongoing series looking at the do's and don'ts of horror and what makes a great horror game on this, the Overthinking Media channel, where we overthink all things gaming, anime, cinematic and entertaining with the intent of starting a discussion on topics that may not change the world, but are fun to think about. In the previous video we were discussing when to use music, audio cues and sound effects to help enrich the player's experience. If you haven't seen that video yet, I suggest clicking the eye in that corner. It'll get you up to date with the series. This is an ongoing series. This is part 7. If you haven't watched the first 6 parts, I highly recommend it. It's going to make a lot more sense in this series. And on top of all that, it helps the channel grow. And I may be biased, but honestly, I think they're pretty good videos. I'm actually quite proud of how they came out. So with that all out of the way, let's jump into the video, where we're discussing silence. How to use it, when to use it, and when not to. Silence can be one of the most effective uses of audio in horror games. And once again, because it's a new video, I want to reiterate, when I say silence, I don't mean... No, I mean having the sound of the player's footsteps, having the sound of their breathing, the equipment they're carrying, the buzzing of the electricity, the wind outside, the creaking of the house. That is what I mean by silence. Having no audio or music, but having those sounds there. That allow you to know that you're there, but there's no comfort or sound around you. But why does using this kind of silence work so well? Or rather, how can it work so well? And why does it work so well? I think it's because in the modern world, there is no silence anymore. Think about it. There's the sound of me talking in this video. There's the sound of your cars outside wherever you're living. Maybe there's the planes, the children down the road, the sound of your neighbours watching whatever the hell they're watching on TV, the buzz of your computer, the sound of your light, whatever it may be. The world is never silent anymore. And hey, if you're not at home and you're just watching this video on the go, I appreciate you watching. Thanks for watching, it means a lot. But also, there's the sound of cars, traffic, dogs, barking. This really got away from me. You know what I mean though. Out in the real world, there's so many noises no matter where you go. Even if it's night time, there's the buzzing of the lights on the street. There's the music coming from the bars. There's the drunks wandering 4 blocks away yelling at a pigeon for whatever reason. The world is never silent anymore. Just to go on a quick tangent, have you ever walked outside after a heavy snow and just stood there? Whether it be in the garden or the street in front of your house. Just after a really heavy snowfall, you just walk outside and just listen. And the world just feels silent. All those regular noises you're so used to, now muffled, bouncing off the snow. It's a weird experience, isn't it? It's beautiful. But the world feels eerie. Wrong, almost. All those commonplace noises you're so used to, they're just not there anymore. Which is why I believe silence works so well in games. Because the concept of silence nowadays is such an abnormality to us. Due to how noisy the world is now, we're barely ever alone with our thoughts. By a game stripping back the sound of any music and leaving the player in complete silence, it does a few things. However, 2 of the noteworthy things that it does is 1, it causes the player to have to enter a reflective moment, to think about their journey, to not listen to the music in the distance, to be there on their own with just their thoughts as they wander through wherever they're in, thinking about it. And the second thing it does is it leaves the player feeling so much more susceptible to any noise they hear. If it's pushing you as the player towards a reflective moment, it leads you to think about your journey so far, how far you've come, what you've had to do to get to the point you are, and all the terrible things you had to survive through. You're left to think about the actual situation you find yourself in, whether it be trapped in a mansion with zombies, on the run from demons, trapped in an insane asylum with the inmates on loose, or stuck in an old run-down underwater research facility where you may just be the very last human alive in the world. Or maybe it's left you to think about how you got to that point and how many terrible things you've had to do to get to that point. Whether it was having to leave your crewmates or friends for dead, or even sacrificing them for your own survival in order to survive. Maybe you've had to crawl through sewers of blood and gore and body parts. Maybe you've had to kill dozens, if not hundreds of people. Or maybe you have to root around in a dead body to find the item you needed. By stripping back the music and leaving only silence, the game makes you think about this situation. It makes you think about how you got to where you are and all the actions you have to take. Or the game could just be trying to leave the player feeling even more susceptible to any noise or sound to freak them out even more. I touched on it in my previous video, but by stripping back all audio and leaving the player with silence, they suddenly become aware of every single little noise in the game. And by doing so, every noise in the game suddenly becomes so much more impactful. Suddenly, they're on edge the entire time. The game makes you feel scared without even doing anything. All they've done is turn the audio down, but suddenly you know something's not right. You've lost one of your senses. You can't hear anything. Suddenly, something's up. If a player is wandering through a forest and suddenly becomes aware that there's no noises at all, not even birds chirping or crickets cricketing. Is that a word, cricketing? The cricket chirp or cricket? I'm going to say the cricket. Cricket cricketing. That's just a word I'm saying now. You know what, I'm keeping that in. Yeah, where it's bird chirpings, crickets cricketing, or deers making noise in the distance. If the player's wandering through a forest and suddenly they can't hear any of that, and it's just pure silence, where not even insects live, suddenly they're aware something's not right. It either meant every single creature had fled the forest for one reason or another, knowing their life was in danger, or there's something else in the forest that has killed every living thing, and you're currently walking through that forest. Suddenly you're a lot more aware of every footstep you take, every crunch of the leaf as you walk through the forest, every noise you make. There's nothing though. It's just you. No birds chirping, no crickets making their noises, no animals rustling in the bushes. There's nothing at all. And then, in the distance, you hear the leaves crunch. That's the first noise in the entire forest that was made not by you. Suddenly, you're aware of it. Suddenly you know there's something else in the forest with me. And suddenly you know it's in that direction, heading towards me. By stripping back all the noise and just leaving the forest with silence, the game becomes exponentially even scarier. There's no cars in the distance, there's no planes in the skies, there's no crickets in the forest. It's just the audio of your breathing and your footsteps. And that's terrifying, and it works so well if done right. The reason this all works so well, I believe, is because the principle of unknownness, which I touched on in another previous video, but to take it a step further in this situation. Without the use of audio, the world feels unknown, unnatural, uncommon, just unfamiliar. Even if it's a location you know extremely well, if suddenly all those commonplace noises are gone, it feels wrong, right? I think it's one of the reasons that commonplace locations become so much scarier at night. In so many games, movies, animes, whatever it would be, the amount of students or characters that go back to school at night, suddenly it's a lot scarier, right? Just a school, just a building. You went there every day for years, but now it's at night, and the lights are up. Something doesn't feel right. You feel uneasy because all those commonplace noises aren't there anymore. There's no footsteps scurrying through the hallway trying to get to class on time. There's no scratching of the whiteboard that the teacher wrote on it. There's no scribbling of paper as pens touch on them. There's no doors slamming. There's no lockers closing. There's no chatter of the students between classes. Even the lights aren't buzzing because they're not on. You just stand there in the dark school. If you'd been in the middle of the day, you could have closed your eyes and done the entire trip. You know the place at the back of your hand. You went there for years. But all of a sudden, it's not right. I know this place. It's a school. I went there all the time, but without all those noises, this place feels unnatural. Suddenly, the school feels eerie. It feels uncommon because it's void of all those safety noises, all those commonplace noises that you are so familiar with. Because of that, it feels alien, foreign, and just scarier, which is awesome. And all of that was done just by taking away the sound of everyday life. However, while audio can be implemented amazingly in ways I've just mentioned, some games don't quite hit that mark. Some games try and use silence, but don't quite get it right. Some games just blare the audio at you to try and get that reaction to freak you out. Sometimes the game doesn't get the audio levels quite right, and the background is just slightly too loud and you can't hear the enemies coming. Sometimes the game just misses that mark. Examples of this include using the same soundtrack throughout the entire game to the point that everything just blurs together and you're not quite sure what level was where. For instance, I've used the exact same soundtrack throughout this entire series, which had a reason for. If you haven't seen that, go back and watch the previous episode, which I talk about why I use the same soundtrack. However, because of that, you as the watcher might not quite remember what part was where. When was I talking about this subject? When was I talking about audio? When was I talking about the 5 main factors? What was factor number 4? Because all the same audio was used over and over. So all the video just kind of blends together. Which, in this case, I think is fine. This is one massive long video. That's all it is. It's one massive long video broken up into lots of little parts, which was required in order to get out on time. But in the case of horror games, if the game just used one soundtrack, it just blurs together. Sure, the effect might be amazing at the beginning. It may be a great soundtrack that's freaky and scary and fantasy and gets that chill down your spine. But if you've been hearing the same soundtrack for 5 hours the entire time, it kind of stops being that effective. However, another issue games have is, even if they do have separate soundtracks, the soundtracks are too similar to each other and all the audio cues blend in together. Despite how great I think Outlast is, you thought I'd go for an entire video about talking about Outlast in horror? You thought wrong. Despite how great I think Outlast is though, it definitely suffers from this. I could not tell you any of the names of any of the tracks in Outlast. And until I made this video, I had no idea there were over 40 soundtracks in Outlast. Seriously, if I play like this song to you, where in the game does this tune play? You may be able to say instantly, oh, it's in that part. But is that this track? Or is it this track? These are 2 different tracks. Do you know where this track was playing though? Or did you think this track was playing when this track was playing? What about this track? Those are 3 separate tracks I've been playing. Which track did I just change to? Was it track 1, 2 or 3? It's an issue, isn't it? It's great audio, but it all just sounds the same. And everything blends together. But maybe that's what Red Barrel was going for. Maybe they wanted that experience where it's one long experience. Maybe they wanted to feel like everything's very slightly different, but still the same. Maybe they want to make you feel trapped in the same location. They change up the audio just enough so it's different, but it feels like one long, terrifying experience. Maybe that's what they were going for. If so, I guess it works, but how well does it actually work? Because I can't tell you what soundtrack is what. It all just blends together to me. I couldn't tell you which soundtrack was playing when you when you first meet the Walrider. I can tell you what soundtrack was playing when you meet the Doctor. I can tell you what soundtrack was playing when Chris Walker chases after you. I have no idea, because it all just sounds too familiar, too samey, and it all blends together. Though not exactly a horror game, Outlast has soundtracks that I could play any number of the songs and instantly you would know exactly what battle it's from. You know exactly what character you're fighting. You know exactly what the moment was. And that's a problem when it doesn't work. It doesn't create memorable experiences. And Outlast, as amazing as it was, all blends together. And another thing games should try to avoid when using audio is inconsistent or missing sounds that should be in the game. For smaller games, I can kind of forgive forgetting certain sound clips. However, if you're walking through a forest and it's chucking it down with rain, there shouldn't just be the sound of rain. Yes, the rain is important. However, if you're walking through a forest and it's chucking it down, there should be the sound of your footsteps stepping in mud. There should be the sound of the wind blowing between the trees. There should be the sound of the rain hitting the leaves and dropping down each leaf. Bushes scurrying. Instead, what some games do is, even though there is torrential downpour and you're walking through a rain-covered forest right now, the only sound in the background is the gentle wind of a cloudless night. There is no footsteps. There is no squelching of the mud. All there is the soft sound of not even rain clouds, just gentle wind in the background. Relaxing, isn't it? But not what it should be. It should be torrential downpour. It should have that heavy rain. It should have the squelching footsteps. It should have the droplets from leaf to leaf. And it should have your wet footsteps. However, when it comes to horror games, there is one more thing so many games do with their audio in order to try and scare the player, in order to try and make them feel uneasy, to make them feel unsafe, to make them feel scared. What the game does is it will randomly bleat out loud audio that's way above what it should be, just to try and freak the player out. In fact, one could actually say that this kind of action could be considered a scare that makes you jump. One might even call it a jump scare. And that's what we're talking about in the next part of this series, because I believe there are 7 main categories of what jump scares fall into. And that's what we're talking about next time. So, if you want to see that video as soon as it comes out, you know what to do. If you're not yet subscribed, I recommend hitting that button, as it will keep you updated with all my latest content and show you a video as soon as it comes out, as well as any of the other great videos I'm making in the future as well. If you did enjoy this video, hitting that like button really is appreciated and helps the channel grow, and I can't put into words how much that means. And seeing as you reached the end of the video, I'm guessing you've enjoyed this video, so if you have, why not share it with one of your friends? If you think they'll enjoy it, give them a share, let them watch it, and you have something to discuss tomorrow over the water cooler. And hey, leave a comment telling me what you thought about the video. Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Why am I right? Why am I wrong? Discuss in this comment section below, because that's the entire purpose of this series. That's the entire purpose of all my videos. I want to start a discussion that we can talk about. And hey, hitting that bell button may or may not alert you as soon as my videos go live. So why not hit it just in case to be up to date? Let's see if we can get this video to 10 views, 5 likes, and 5 comments. And just a random discussion starter, Xenomorphs. Inherently evil, yes or no? With that all said and done, in the next video we're talking about the 7 types of jump scares and what they are. See if you can guess what they are. The video's coming out in a few days, you go until then. If you guess before it goes live, you get a little heart, I'll pin your comment, you can say whatever you want, as long as it's not offensive. Thanks for watching, I'll see you then. Hit the button on the screen to watch the latest video. Bye.